everyone to this week's weekly web chat. I'm here today with Carrie Wardle to talk a little bit about Scratch Junior and why and how we should be teaching kids to code. Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you. Hello.
Will you reintroduce yourself again and just share a little bit about your journey with Scratch Junior?
Sure. I am Carrie Wardle. I'm the teacher ambassador from Idaho Public Television. So I do what Darcy does in Idaho. But prior to that, I was a classroom teacher. I taught 5th grade for about 10 years. And then now I'm doing this. And my journey to coding started about 4 years ago when I had a little, I kind of wanted to get into it anyway, and I started looking at the Hour of Code stuff on code.org, but I had a student who was really into that kind of stuff, and he struggled with typical classroom tasks and began asking me if he could do some things, demonstrate some things in other ways. And so anyway, I found some activities on code.org, and that was his place where he just excelled and loved it. And really, that's when I started getting into it. And then I did it as a classroom. I didn't know Scratch Junior existed.
Okay.
I used code.org at the time. And then Khan Academy has some Hour of Code activities as well. So we did that a couple times. I didn't know Scratch Junior existed until I started working for Idaho Public Television. So, and now I do that, and I teach Scratch Junior to teachers and students and classrooms, and wherever I can teach it. I'm kind of a nerd about it. So.
And that's why you're here. I have played with it, and I have helped some teachers in North Dakota use this in their classroom, but not nearly as many. And hopefully we'll also get time for Carrie to talk a little bit about some of the Scratch Junior training that she has available online, so that people could potentially contact her if they want more information about that training as well. So we're going to get into our plan for today. And again, we're in our resource document. If you're watching the video, this is in the video description underneath. It's just the resource doc. And we're going to look at some of our Scratch Junior resources. Our main goal is to look at Scratch Junior. We've got one focus today, so we'll try to get in and out. But the reason why we're focusing on Scratch, last week we talked about a whole bunch of coding apps, including Scratch. As I've learned about this, and certainly add in Carrie, I just like that Scratch has the coding, but it has this element of storytelling and problem solving that a lot of the other coding games don't have. A lot of the other coding games, it's all about the sequencing and about the coding. But I found Scratch Junior really cool for me as an adult to play with, even because it was like telling a little story. So I like that is a deeper dive into it makes it more rigorous. You've got the coding, the sequencing, but you've also got problem solving and storytelling that you can weave into a whole bunch of different lessons.
Yeah, and one of the other things that I really love about it is that kids don't have to know how to read to use it. And a lot of the other coding programs, the blocks are words. And so they have to be able to read those words. And so the littler kids, that are just starting out in kindergarten or whatever, can't read those. But Scratch Junior doesn't require that.
That's great. And how young have you gone with Scratch Junior in terms of working with kids?
Kindergarten, like beginning of the year kindergarten is the youngest I've done, although I have a 4-year-old son who's almost 5, and I've been doing it at home with him just recently, and he's catching on to it as well. So I haven't done it in like a preschool setting. Kindergarten is the youngest I've done, but my 4-year-old loves it.
So that's great. So we're talking really about a tool that certainly it's designed, I believe, for 5 through 8-year-olds, I think is kind of their target. I think older students would enjoy it from the storytelling aspect. but it's certainly designed for our younger learners. But I could think of a whole bunch of pretty cool ways to use some older kids who have done coding to come in and help support younger kids as they start playing with Scratch.
I've done it with 5th and 6th graders who love it.
And they like it too?
The little kid, yes, this version, they love it just as much, because they obviously can go through it a lot faster, and they can do a lot of those higher level things that, you know, some of those younger kids struggle with a little. So I've had 5th and 6th graders love it. I've done it with K to 6th grade, and
that's great to hear. And I started playing with this last spring and did a few things. So as you look at the resource guide, we've got a link that will take you to the Scratch Junior site on PBS Kids. There are also a couple training videos here made by Miss Carrie Wardle. And so if you want just a step-by-step of how to use Scratch, how to do all the steps, those videos are here. You could also use one of those videos to start introducing it to kids. She walks through all of the steps of how to do the coding. There are some activities, and I'm going to turn it over to Carrie here in just a second. On this page, I've shared, because I'm proud of my coding skills here, I did want to share. You can see, I just did a little recording. This is a coding that I did when I was learning how to do this. So I'm telling a little story. These people are the English teacher and me, right? We're telling a story, but the little crab keeps getting scared. He runs away, and then the people float away. But I could easily tell that as a story. And then I have this little story that I made with Peg, who's my favorite PBS little person. And she is in a situation, she's going to meet this monster. I'm sharing this just because we're going to go through a couple of, I'm going to have Carrie show just some of the mechanics. This was the first time that I played with this, and I get it, I'm an adult, and so I can do some things that maybe a first grader can't. But I found when I taught this to a second grade class, they accomplished more in 30 minutes than I remotely thought possible. Yeah. But you can see I have multiple pages, so I really can tell a story. And in my story, the problem was that Peg scared the monster, and so she had to figure out a way to make the monster come back. So she got a blanket, and she asks the monster to come back down with her, and then we did it. Yeah, and so there's a little demo. You can record your voice, so kids can record their voices animating different things. And then Peg and the monster do a little dance to celebrate their friendship. So a little cheesy, but again, the English teacher in me was like, I really want to play with this storytelling part. And that was the piece that really pushed it over the edge for me of, all right, the kids, this is going to really deepen content. This is really going to shift what they're doing and how they're doing it. So Carrie, where do you start? If I'm a new teacher, where am I going to start my Scratch Junior journey?
Well, I mean, obviously familiarize yourself with the app first is my recommendation. And we are a little bit less, I guess, fearless than kids. So teachers are scared to just jump in and start doing it, because what if I mess it up? But just do it. You can delete the program. You can get rid of any of the blocks. Just get in and play. But the cool thing is that for grown-ups who aren't quite as fearless, the app itself has video tutorials within it. If you click on the information little button at the top, it tells you what every little block does. It lays out the interface for you. The stage is what it's called. It lays that out and tells you what every little piece does. So you certainly can, I would start honestly and that's the same place I say to start with kids. Just open it up and play and start creating, so that you're familiar with it a little bit. But the other thing that I tell teachers all the time is that you do not have to be the expert. And that's a hard thing for teachers. We're used to being experts in everything. You do not have to have every single skill and concept mastered in order to do this. In fact, the kids will blow your mind with what they will come up with if you let them do it. And what amazing confidence booster for a second grader who learns how to do something that their teacher can't do, or that can teach their teacher or show their teacher how to do something. It's an amazing thing. So, I mean, I have done Scratch a million times, and there are still moments where a kid will do something and I'll be like, how did you do that? Because they come up with amazing things. So I would say you need to be familiar with it, obviously, but I don't think you need to be an expert and master it before you get started. And then we have really some great activities on the Scratch Junior website, and those activities are scaffolded. So they start with just a few blocks, and then they add in some more blocks and some more blocks. And if you teach those, your kids by the end will have mastered coding itself. And then they can move beyond coding after that. So that's kind of the recommendation that I give teachers often, is start by making sure, because it's way too many skills, especially for those little kids. If you're trying to make them do a project where they're telling a story, but they're not familiar enough with the coding app, the frustration level is
going to be through the roof. That's a great tip, that even though I'm showing like where you can get to, just as like with anything, we have to keep in mind the scaffolding of, and you mentioned last week that some kindergarten teachers started by printing off the little different icons that appear in the program, and they were holding those up for the kindergartners as instructions, kind of like Simon says. So the kindergartners, before they even touched the app, already knew what the different symbols meant and what the different tools, what the different blocks would do in the program.
Yep. So that I tell teachers, don't start with a big grand, yay, we're going to create this wonderful story. You're going to get there, I hope, but to invest the time up front to go through these activities and make sure the kids can do the skills and are familiarized with the tools and the blocks and what they do. And then you'll get the amazing, cool, fun, activities that will blow your mind. So that's just kind of a good place to start.
And about how long do you typically do this? Like, if I'm doing this in my classroom, what is a reasonable chunk of time to dedicate to introducing Scratch or to practicing Scratch?
Some of that depends on the age group. Kinders and first grades I probably would not do more than 45 minutes. And these activities, the lesson plans are designed to be about 90 minutes. So I'm going to tell you that with kindergartners, especially at the beginning of the year, sometimes one lesson takes 2 or 3 sessions, and that's okay. I think that, in order to make sure that you want it to be fun enough for them that they love it, but you don't want it to be so fast-paced and frustrating for them that they're going to hate it after that. So
it's that, and it's what we always do with that zone of proximal development. We want them to be just outside their comfort zone, so they're stretching and they're learning something new. And last week you made, I thought, just the best point about why to try coding, and that was because you saw kids work through frustrations and have to work through problem solving. Like when their code didn't work, they had to fix it and they had to work through that problem solving. So we want that. We want them just outside their comfort zone. But if it's so hard that they can't possibly do it, then they're just going to give up before they have any sense. So this
and that seems like teaching 101, but I think sometimes we forget that because it's a new thing and we don't know exactly what we're doing. So we're trying to, so that's just a good reminder. Like, it's okay if you take 3 sessions or, you know, whatever to do one of these lessons, as long as your kids are getting it. So the older kids though, if you're doing it with 4th and 5th graders, I mean, they can do it in an hour.
Oh, cool.
Really complete an entire lesson. I've done it with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and I rarely have taken 90 minutes. I'll tell you the truth, except for, you know, with the younger kids. But I don't do 90 minutes at once with the littles. So I can usually do it in about an hour with older kids, and then a couple.
And that's even if that's their first time doing something. About an hour, they could do one of these activities for 4th.
Yeah, for probably third through. I would say 3rd is a little iffy, but 4th through 6th, I can definitely do in an hour.
Very cool.
The younger kids, 3rd might take the full hour and a half, and then kinder and 1st through 2nd, or you need a couple different.
You're going to have to do some steps of just practicing those different skills. And the nice thing for those of you who do want to try some Scratch, in the packet, there are these how-to cards that PBS provides. And so you can start your kids just going through on paper. So we're also talking, like, you might not have tech every day. And so if you need to do some practicing, you could certainly go through some of these different cards and go through how to do something, learn some of these instructions prior. There's also a little Scratch how-to slide deck that I put in here. So you could easily do a couple of these first things with your kiddos before you even have devices. So the one 2nd grade classroom that I went to, I started on this slide and I just asked them to make predictions. What do you think this green flag means? And then we talked about it. So similar to Carrie's Simon Says game activity, even with 2nd graders, I started without devices in their hands. And we just talked about, what do you think these basic arrows and blocks mean? And then I made them do that movement, like, right? So we moved one step, we turned in a circle, we jumped, and then we stopped. So there are some things that you could do to lay the foundation on days where you might not have technology.
Yeah, and the activities on the Scratch Junior website as well have, I mean, there are cool things. There's some storyboards in one of them that has the characters and the backgrounds, so you could print those off and let the kids storyboard. I think it's on the, oh, this isn't my screen, I was like scrolling. I think it is on the story mashup one. If you click on that and scroll down, there are, no, keep going, materials right there, storyboarding assets. And so this is the backgrounds that are in Scratch Junior. And then if you keep going, and it's not every background, obviously, because you can't do every background, but there's several. And then there's also characters right there. And so potentially that's also a no tech activity that you could let the kids do, because there's also blocks that they could cut out, and you could, you know, you could almost have them code on at the desk with the blocks and the storyboard characters. So,
well, and we talk so much in the writing process about drafting or outlining, and storyboarding is just another graphic organizer way of doing something like that. So I love that idea that, again, so if kids are having to share tech, right? There are different things that you could do, like different stations, because some kids are going to take a long time. I think about even just my nieces and nephews. I have one niece who, if she was doing this, it would probably take her an hour and a half just to plan her story because she's such a perfectionist. But then I have her younger sister would be done in about 20 minutes and would be ready to start the project. So just the natural proclivities of different kids. I love this idea, Carrie, of yeah, give them some things, just physical paper, and have them plot out, have them do a little pre-writing for how they're going to get this started.
Yeah, they all of the lesson plans come with a design handout as well. I don't know if you've taken a look at that, but so, which I love for a planning thing as well. So if you click on the, yeah, scroll down, click on that design handouts right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I print these and make the kids do it every time. And so they have to tell what characters they're going to use. They have to draw the actual blocks and describe the movement that they're going to use. And so that, when I teach a class, that's their path to be able to code on the computer.
Mm-hmm.
I make them plan it ahead of time, and then there's a reflection if you want. Sometimes I copy front to back, but I always remember when we went to a meeting a while back with the creators of Peg Plus Cat, and one of the things that they said was it takes them about 9 months to do one episode, and that 6 months of that is completely tech free. Like, they draw everything, they plan everything out, they write out the script. That is not sitting in front of a computer. And I make that connection with kids because they hate the planning part. You know, they just want to jump in and do it. But I always tell them, real world, like, these are actual people that are designers. And then about 6 months into it, then they now have all of their plans drawn up, and they take it and start programming on the computer.
Yeah.
And so
that's a great story. And
yeah.
I don't know that I have seen this planning guide, but I love, so think about, again, sorry, English teacher, nerding on you.
No.
But think again of the parts of a story. We've got characters, background. This is basically
Setting.
our setting,
Yep.
right? We've got actions.
Mm-hmm.
The movements could also be part of, you could certainly talk about conflict as part of the actions, like what is the conflict that's happening there. When I think about sounds, this to me is really about mood in addition to things. So are there some sounds that would enhance the mood, would enhance the setting, would enhance the characters to help tell that story? The text, are there things that just help clarify what's going on? And then the blocks is where we're really starting to get into the coding.
Right.
So if you look at this planning document from, again, from a curriculum standpoint, there are big chunks of this that are ticking all kinds of curriculum boxes of the kids having to plan a project for what they're going to do. In this case, the tree problem, the activity has identified the conflict for us. We all have the same conflict, right? Cat is stuck in a tree. You have to get him out.
Mm-hmm.
So we all have the same conflict, but what a cool way to also talk about how, like, all these stories will have different plot sequences, they'll have different resolutions. So again, like, you can really hit a lot of those educational learning, all of those things that just tie to curriculum. And I don't see why you couldn't do this for a history lesson or for,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and tie in some different things like that.
So I'll just show you a couple of fun little things. So first of all, one thing you should know when downloading this is that there is a PBS Kids Scratch Junior, and there's also just a plain, like, regular Scratch Junior. The PBS Kids one has this little green, you can see here, right here, this little green girl dot on the front. So the interface is the same. If kids can use one, they can use the other. The difference is that Scratch Junior doesn't have the PBS Kids characters. So the blocks are all the same, and it doesn't have the PBS Kids characters and backgrounds. So if you want the one with PBS Kids, which kids love, they love that they can code Wild Kratts, or, you know, Arthur or whatever. And so if you want that one, then you should make sure you download the right one. So
and
there's some, go ahead.
The only limitation that I want to just let people know about, it is iOS specific.
Well, Android, you can do it on Android. You can do it on Amazon Fires.
Great.
And recently, some Chromebooks, and I have a list which I can drop in the chat.
That'd be great.
If your Chromebook isn't compatible with Google Play, so Google is releasing Chromebooks that, my understanding is that all the new ones will have it. And the older ones, some of them are compatible with the Google Play Store, which is actually the Android App Store.
Great.
Then you can also download it on a Chromebook because you download it through the Play Store.
And
so I can drop that list in the chat.
I apologize, yeah. It's just that it's for, other than the Chromebooks, this isn't something you can play on a computer.
Right, it's not a PC.
Yeah, you need, it's an app, and so you need to have a device that is app-based. So unlike code.org, which kids can play online, and they can play just through the website, and they can play on any computer or a tablet. This is tablet specific device. It's app run. It's run by an app.
Right. Yep. Yes, so that's good to know. So this is the main start screen. There's some how-to video tutorials right here. Now, I'll tell you, I very rarely see kids use that, but I see teachers use it a lot because, you know, kids usually just jump in and do it. They don't care. But nonetheless, if you click on that, there's a little video tutorial that you can watch that shows you how to do stuff. So just as an FYI, but I'm going to go ahead and hit the start. And this brings me up to my project screen now. Obviously, if you've never done this before, you're not going to have any projects. I have a bunch because I'm a nerd. But I'll just show you a couple of the things that I love on this screen. So that one little place that I talked about a minute ago, under the eye, will show you interface guide, shows you the stage and what all of those things do. So if you click on each of those numbers, number one, and then it's telling you right over here, this is called the stage, and I don't know why my thing is blinking. Anyway, so if you forget, it shows you exactly how to do all of that and walks you through it. Paint editor guide at the bottom, I'm tapping on that. Again, shows you how to work the paint editor. So this is a good place to send kids if they keep asking you a million questions and you want them to kind of look on their own, but also, again, a really good place for teachers to go to familiarize themselves with what to do. And then there's a block guide right down here as well. And so it tells you what every block does and what the words are, what they're called trigger blocks, right? And I use that vocabulary with my kids, trigger blocks and motion blocks. And so anyway, as you scroll through, it tells you what all of those blocks do and the categories. So this is just a really useful place. You can send kids here, but it's also a really great place for teachers. And then the settings, the only really important thing about this, and now I don't know why I'm not working, is you can toggle the language from English to Spanish. So, and I don't know why it's not on my screen, which this is annoying me. But, oh, there, okay. So you can choose English or Spanish. So I love that for the English language learners.
Mm-hmm.
And then the light bulb has story starters. So these are stories that have already been, I'm sorry, I'm in a room that has motion lights.
You're fine.
And I'm not moving enough, so they keep turning off. So these are stories that have already started and the kids can finish them. So they've already got some code in there, like the one Peg plus Cat one's like their dance, they're gonna do a play or whatever. And so this is it's good for a lot of reasons, but especially if you have kids that are, I don't know where to start, I don't know what to do. Send them here and let them start. Once you open it up and they start coding, it'll save it to their project screen and it won't affect this at all. And so this is on everybody. So I love that. I love the story starter thing.
And another really cool, like if we all use the same story starter, let's see how all the different stories end. Like another cool little clash challenge. Maybe early in the coding adventure, that's part of what you do as a nice easing into that next step of creating your own story. Yeah,
there's a ton of things that can be that you can use the story starters for. So I always point that out because I think they're awesome. So I'll just open up a project here and we'll start. These are my saved projects. It auto saves, so there's nothing you have to do. But I'm going to click on this blue plus sign here, which will start a new project for me. It always comes up with Dot, and I can just delete her, and or I can code her, either way. And so I'll just show you a couple of the basics. I'm not gonna give you a spoiler because you have to go do it yourself. But you delete characters similar to the way that you delete apps, at least on an iPhone. I'm not an Android user, so I don't know, but I can just hold my finger down on her. She'll shake, and I can tap the X, and it'll get rid of her. So the characters are added right here, and you will see that the PBS characters are preloaded in here. And I love that. I went to I love this story. I went to a place where a school, and I did this with 5th graders, and one of the boys was not very excited because he thought he was too old for this. And so he was kind of sitting in the back like, you know, with that look on his face. And I was like, and he's like, I don't want to do this. And I'm like, well, that's what we're doing. So go ahead and open it up. And I kid you not, he opened it and he went, wait, the wild crats are in here. And that was it. And we were doing Peg plus Cat that day, but I let him do wild crats, and he was hooked from then on. And he was so excited that the wild crats were in here. So I'm not kidding when I say sometimes that's a selling point. So
I do also love, though, up at the top, you can draw your own character.
And right, and you can edit any of these characters. Whoops. Sorry, I keep tapping things. So yeah, the paintbrush right up here allows you to add your own character by either drawing it. You can take a picture of yourself, and then you could be the character, or I could take a picture of my classmate and they could be the character. And so there's a bunch of, I mean, I can draw
I could code my cat.
Yes, you could totally code your cat. The possibilities are endless. But the other thing that you can do also is edit any of the characters. So, I mean, I can get Martin here, and if I tap the paintbrush while he's selected, now I could change his color of his shirt or whatever I wanted to do as well. So you can, in addition to being able to do your own character, you can edit any of the characters that are in here.
So I could add my school logo to the front of his Wild Kratts power suit.
Yep.
That would be really cool.
Which would be super cool. And kids think it's fun to be able to change the, you know, the color and things like that. So possibilities are endless. The other thing I'll show you about characters, and I think this is slightly creepy, but kids love it. There are some characters right here, these Odd Squad ones, and here that don't have a face, and the kids can take a picture and put their own face in that character's face.
Oh, cool.
Again, sort of creepy, but kids think it's awesome. And you just, I just could tap on that and hit the paintbrush, and then I can take a picture by tapping on the face here, and then I'm going to tap this camera. Oops, I just turned it black. Other way around, sorry. Camera first and then face. And then I can just, you know, line my face up in there. And
oh, that's pretty awesome. I can see why kids like that.
Kids love it,
now
right?
You have a cartoon body, like you're part cartoon, but it's you. And so now you can be in this adventure with the Wild Kratts.
Right. So, and so kids love Odd Squad, and so sometimes they think it's cool that they can be an Odd Squad agent.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just one of the cool character features. And then backgrounds are right up here where the picture is. So same thing. It has already pre-built backgrounds from the PBS shows, but you can create your own, including taking a picture of anything you want. So if you actually wanted to code your cat at your house, in your living room, you could take a picture of your living room and then code your cat to show her that she's not supposed to be on the couch or whatever. And so you tap the blank one and then the paintbrush, and then you can make anything you want be the background. So again, if I tapped the camera and then I'm going to flip it, and I could have this classroom be my background, and there it is. So, or they can use the ones that are already in there. So again, not just tied to what's in there, but they can edit the ones that are in there as well. So just a ton of possibilities for what you can do. A teacher that I worked with had their students code stories. They were doing book studies, and they were reading stories, and he had them take pictures of the characters in the story, and then find a background and take a picture of that, and then code the actual story. So he tied it into what they were reading, but had them actually take a picture of that too. So that's just
I love that. That's another great project. Like, write your own ending to To Kill a Mockingbird, to Where a Red Fern Grows, to any of those books. So like, take what you're reading and bring that into the coding and have kids explore different scenes or different things. I was also just thinking as you were doing this, because the classroom is kind of dark, the picture, since you're not moving enough to keep the lights on.
To keep the lights on,
I also like this idea of you could literally just do a mood project, right? And each kid gets an adjective, and you have to create a little scene that embodies happiness, that embodies frustration, that embodies like these different adjectives or different moods. So it could be eerie or creepy.
Cool.
And you could so then they have to really think like designers. Okay, well, what background is going to do that? What characters are going to do that? What sounds are going to do that? What movements are also going to help do that? Like, all of those elements go. And then the other kids in the class could have to guess, what was your adjective? What was your descriptor?
And I think that's why I so nerd out about coding, is that it's more than just coding. I mean, obviously that's a great skill itself, but oh my gosh, the things that you can do with it are mind blowing, that you can take to your teaching to the next level. And it isn't just, I mean, it just is, it's mind blowing. I had a teacher tell me that she used to have kids, when she was talking about biomes, she used to have kids, created in a shoebox, that we all know 90% of their parents did it themselves, right? And then you bring in the shoebox. Well, once she learned about Scratch Junior, she had them create a virtual biome, because if you look in the backgrounds, there's a desert, there's an ocean, there's a couple of different forests, oceans, there's a tundra, there's one that looks like a tundra, which I might have just passed by, but anyway, here's a snowy one. That's not really a tundra, but there's snowy.
Sure, and so different climates, different ecosystems.
So she had them research. They used the background that fit their ecosystem, and then they had to put the characters, that they coded the animals that actually would be in that ecosystem, and they had to research which animals would be in the ecosystem, and what kinds of things do they eat and whatever. And she had them create virtual biomes using Scratch Junior. And I think, I don't know, but she said the learning was off the charts compared to years before, where the kids probably weren't doing it, and if they were, they weren't doing it themselves, because this was all just in class. They did their research, they figured all of it out themselves. And so it just is amazing, the things that you can do.
Well, and I'm just a stuck record here, but I think part of that is, instead of just creating a biome, they were creating a story about a biome. And so, and they were exploring that biome. And we as humans, like, we've just evolved. Like, storytelling is part of how we communicate. Like, think of any time people get together, like, right, we tell stories. And so while they're exploring all those scientific facts, they get to create this world and kind of tell a little story about how this biome functions. So again, Scratch Junior just really, it's still the coding. You're still doing the problem solving, the sequencing, the sequential, like having to do these things. They're still learning the basics of coding. A lot of the symbols while these symbols don't have words, a lot of these symbols are going to be pretty similar to symbols that they see in the code.org game.
Right. Yep.
You know, so if they're playing here, they'll be able to code switch, so to speak, between the different places. But this is, so again, and I know Carrie and I were both biased because we happen to work for PBS. But this is why when I shared last week that when I first heard about teaching kids coding, I kind of went like, why? Like, what is this? And then I learned more and I played some of the online games and I was like, okay. It was when I played PBS Scratch Junior and when I looked at this tool that I went,
yeah,
here's the potential of really letting kids create their own thing. And this is a much more powerful tool.
Absolutely. And there's value in creating, and we know that. That's how we take tech to the next level, is by letting kids not just be consumers of content, but creators of content. And this is a really great way for them to create. And every time they're coding, even if they're creating a virtual biome or doing the mood project that you talked about, all of those other skills of perseverance and problem solving and whatever, all of those apply every time, because they got to figure out which buttons they're going to use. And sometimes those blocks aren't going to work and it's not going to work how they want it. And, you know, all of those skills are being practiced every time that you do it. And so that's why I could talk about it for hours and hours. I think there's so much potential for this beyond just, you know, just coding for the sake of coding, but there's just so much potential. So I'll just quickly show you how to run a program, and then I have to jet off for another meeting. But I'm going to tap over here the category block. So you always have to start with the trigger. Yellow are the trigger blocks. So explore these. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we're going to just drag a green flag down here to our programming area. And I just took my finger and drug it down there. And then I'm going to go over here to this, and I'm going to tap on the blue one. And these are my motion blocks. So I want Martin to move, and you connect them like a puzzle piece. And then you can tap on this little number and change that to anything you want. Okay, it can only go up to 99 because I've had kids try like 500. It doesn't work, 99. But you can leave it to kids. They'll always come up with it. But you can do any number that you want there. And then I'm going to make him grow after that. He's going to get bigger, and then he's going to jump up. So that's my code, and I can test it either by tapping this flag or running this flag here. So I'm going to tap it, and there he goes. And I didn't move. The girl didn't move because I haven't coded her. So you have to code her separately. And then when you tap this green flag, it runs all of your code. So if I'm testing just one character, I can tap just this flag and it'll run his. When I'm playing with her, if I want to just test her code, then I can, you know, test just her. And then another just really cool thing that I love for, especially for kiddos, is there's a grid that you can turn on right up here. And then they can, well, first of all, coordinate plane. I taught 5th grade, and coordinate plane was it was a hard thing for kids. And I wish that I had had this, because this is a really concrete way for them. Like, okay, I want them to move over and up. You know, how can you actually code that? But anyway, yeah. But the littles, even though, I mean, if they know they want him to get over to her, they can just count those squares, you know? So he's here. Well, I need him to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 squares. And then I can put in a 7 here, and then he's going to move to where she is. And I don't have to keep trying it out and testing it. So but I love that. So older kids figure out, oh, well, you know, there's a blue dot here at the bottom. And so the older kids often will figure out, oh, well, he's at 9. I need him to get to 16, so I've got to have him move 7 spaces. Like, all of those skills that you now bring in again with the coordinate plane and
Yeah.
not, and, you know, into coding as well. And so, anyway, so that's kind of just the basics. Kids can record sounds. So you can record your own voice or record sounds from wherever by tapping on the little green microphone here. And it allows them to then put in their own voice, and you can do little text bubbles, and there's multiple pages. And so go play with it because it's awesome. And then I'll show you just one other thing really quickly. I know a lot of teachers share devices. So I always get asked, like, well, what do I do? How do I know whose project is whose? Because it just defaults. If I tap this pink house, it just says project 2 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you can change it. This little yellow shape right up here, if you tap on that, it allows you to change the name to anything you want. So I often tell teachers, have them save it as their name. You know, so if you're having multiple kids use one iPad, they can share it as their name. And then when you go back to the home screen, now there's my project with my name.
That's
so
great.
Kids can share. Yeah. And you know, you have to set some norms and things like don't open anybody else's project and mess with things, obviously. But I get asked that a lot, like, well, we don't have one-to-one devices. And so that's a really great thing to do. And then you might have noticed under that yellow button as well, you can share these projects. So you can email them. If parents have this app at home and their kids did something super cool, they could email their projects to their parents.
Would that be an option for kind of backing them up? Like if a kid emailed it to me at the end of a lesson and let's say accidentally someone from even another classroom deleted their project, would I, from that email, be able to email it back to that student to then continue working on?
Potentially, yes, but you have to have an email set up on the device
As well.
Yeah, so it would depend. But the other thing you could do if you're using iPads is share by AirDrop. And so AirDrop doesn't require email.
Sure.
And so if you're the teacher and you have one-to-one iPads, they could all AirDrop it to you. And then if it gets lost, you AirDrop it back to their iPad and they can pick up where they left off. So
that's just a nice, I like that safety valve kind of thing.
Right, especially with younger kids. Sometimes.
Yes, I mean, I would like to think that no one would ever do that intentionally, but I know some kids do things like that. But I also think that some kids might accidentally do something, might accidentally delete a project or might accidentally open a project and start working on it kind of thing. Right. This continues to blow my mind of all of the possibilities that Scratch Junior can have for kids, for curriculum, for content connections, from coding different story endings and bringing in the storybook characters from what you're reading, to talking about coordinate planes, to practicing math skills, to doing mood projects, to writing your own story and doing phases of drafting, in addition to practicing all the coding skills. Thank you so much, Carrie, for giving your time. We've kept you a little bit longer than I intended. So thanks for hanging in, and thanks so much for sharing.
Share my contact information with whomever. I'm happy to help.
Great.
Virtually coach or however I can. So
fantastic. I will add Carrie's email contact in the resource sheet. So if you want to get a hold of her, feel free to shoot her an email for any support with Scratch Junior, or if you would like more information about her virtual learning series on doing Scratch Junior, you could check in with her about that as well.
Yep, awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining us for another episode of Prairie Public's weekly web chats. I'm so happy that you checked out this coding session and can't wait to hear your coding stories from your classroom. We'll see you next time.